The silver blade pierced through his chest with a sickening crunch, and Sira watched in horror as the ancient vampire's eyes, those impossibly dark eyes that had haunted her dreams for 3 years, widened, not in pain, but in something that looked disturbingly like relief. Wait, before the next revelation happens, if this mystery has already captivated you, let us know where you're following this story from. To make sure you don't miss any unexpected alliances or awakened powers, subscribe and join our circle. The game is about to change. Now, back to the scene. Blood, thick and darker than wine, poured from the wound, but Lucien Moreau didn't collapse. Instead, he gripped the blade embedded in his flesh and smiled. Not the predatory grin she'd seen him wear in battle, but something softer, almost human. "Finally," he whispered, his voice carrying across the abandoned cathedral where they stood among shattered pews and broken stained glass. "I've been waiting centuries for someone strong enough." Sira's hand trembled on the hilt. This wasn't how it was supposed to happen. She'd trained for this moment since she was 15 years old, since the night her family's caravan had been massacred on the roads outside Prague. The Venatori order had found her among the bodies, the only survivor, clutching her dead mother's hand. They'd taught her everything: how to track the immortal bloodlines, how to forge weapons from consecrated silver, how to kill without mercy. And they'd told her about him, Lucien Moreau, the Alpha of the Eastern Coven, one of the oldest vampires still walking the earth. 600 years old, they said, personally responsible for the deaths of hundreds, maybe thousands. A monster who'd turned the act of feeding into an art form of cruelty. She'd sworn on her mother's grave that she would be the one to end him, but he wasn't fighting back. "What game are you playing?" Sira demanded, trying to inject steel into her voice, even as confusion clouded her mind. She was 23 now, had spent 8 years preparing for this confrontation. The Venatori had given her everything: purpose, skill, a reason to keep breathing. She couldn't fail them, couldn't fail her family. Lucien's fingers remained wrapped around the blade, but he made no move to remove it. Behind him, through the cathedral's broken windows, the Roman skyline glittered under a full moon. They'd tracked each other across half of Europe to reach this moment, her following the trail of bodies he'd left, him, she now realized, leading her somewhere specific. "No game," he said, and there was something in his accent, French, she thought, though centuries had smoothed most of the edges, that made her hesitate. "You're the first hunter in 200 years who's been skilled enough to get close, strong enough to strike true. And you did it without hesitation, without doubt. That's rare." "Stop talking." Sira twisted the blade, trying to ignore how her stomach churned at the wet sound it made. Vampires were harder to kill than humans, but a silver blade through the heart, consecrated by the Order's priests, should have turned him to ash by now. "Why aren't you dying?" "Because you need to want it," Lucien said simply. "The blade is just metal. It's the intention behind it that matters. And right now, Sira Blackwood, you're not sure." Her name on his lips sent ice through her veins. "How do you?" "I know everything about you." His eyes never left hers, and she noticed for the first time that they weren't just dark. They were a deep, impossible shade of violet, like the sky before a storm. "Your mother was Elara Blackwood, your father, Marcus, your little brother, Thomas. He was 7 when they died. You held him as the blood ran out, sang him the lullaby your mother used to sing, about the stars that guide travelers home." Tears stung Sira's eyes, but she blinked them away furiously. "You have no right." "I know," Lucien continued, his voice dropping lower, "because I didn't kill them, but I know who did. And I've spent the last 3 years making sure you survived long enough to find me. Every vampire that crossed your path and mysteriously hesitated at the crucial moment, every safe house that appeared just when you needed it, Every tip that led you closer? That was me. The cathedral seemed to tilt around her. That's impossible. You're lying. The vampire who killed your family was named Victor Cross. He led a rogue faction that broke from my coven 60 years ago. They believe in chaos, in revealing our existence to the human world through spectacle and terror. I've been hunting him for decades. Lucian's grip on the blade tightened, and she saw his knuckles, pale as marble, strain with tension. But I'm bound by our oldest laws. An alpha cannot kill those who once swore him loyalty, not directly. It would shatter the foundations of vampire society, start a war that would consume both our worlds. So you're using me. The words tasted like ash. Everything I've done, everyone I've killed, was your choice, he interrupted firmly. I simply ensured you survived. The vampires you've hunted were all of Victor's faction, all guilty of atrocities far beyond what you witnessed. You've done the world a service, Sarah. You've become exactly what the Venatori trained you to be, a weapon. She wanted to rip the blade free, wanted to drive it deeper, wanted to scream until the weight in her chest stopped crushing her lungs. But his words had planted hooks in her mind, pulling at threads she'd never wanted to examine. "Why now?" she asked instead. Lucian's smile turned sad. "Because Victor knows you exist now. He knows you've been systematically destroying his faction. And 3 nights ago, he discovered something else." He paused, and for the first time, she saw genuine fear flicker across his ancient features. "He knows the Venatori order has been compromised. Your mentor, Father Domenico, is the most righteous man I've ever known," Sarah snapped. "Was turned 6 months ago," Lucian finished quietly. "Victor's doing. They've been feeding you information, yes, but also studying you, learning your patterns, your weaknesses. Tomorrow night, they're planning to attack the Venatori stronghold in Prague. They'll slaughter everyone, all the hunters in training, the scholars, the children who haven't even chosen this life yet. And then they'll frame me for it, start the war Victor's always wanted." The blade suddenly felt impossibly heavy. "You expect me to believe this? To trust you?" "No." Lucian finally released the weapon, spreading his hand slowly. Blood still seeped from the wound, but he stood steady as stone. "I expect you to verify it. I have evidence, letters, photographs, a vampire thrall who'll testify. I've spent years gathering it all, waiting for the right moment, waiting for someone who could fight beside me, not just against me." "I'm a hunter," Sarah said, but her voice wavered. "You're a vampire, a killer. The stories about you are mostly true," he admitted. "I've lived 6 centuries, Sarah. I've done things that would sicken you. I've been both monster and guardian, tyrant and protector. The world isn't simple enough for the categories your order taught you. I've killed humans, yes, but I've also stopped plagues, prevented wars, and hunted monsters far worse than myself." He took a careful step forward, and she didn't pull away. "Your mother knew this. She was a scholar before she became a traveler. She studied our kind, understood the complexities. That's why Victor targeted her. She was writing a book that would have revealed the truth about vampire society, shown that we're not all the devils from your stories." Sarah's breath caught. Her mother's journals had been lost in the attack, but she remembered the hours spent in their caravan, watching her mother write by candlelight, pages and pages in a language young Sarah hadn't yet learned to read. She couldn't finish the sentence. Everything she'd built her life upon felt like it was crumbling beneath her feet. "You don't have to decide now," Lucian said gently, But if you want to save your order, if you want to stop the war that's coming, you need to pull that blade out and let me show you the truth. We have until tomorrow's sunset. After that, it won't matter what either of us wants. The world will burn anyway." The cathedral fell silent except for the sound of her own ragged breathing. Sarah looked at the weapon still buried in his chest, at the vampire who should be her sworn enemy, at the choice that would define everything that came next. Behind him, through the broken windows, the moon cast silver light across his features. He looked young, no more than 30 in human years, but his eyes held the weight of centuries. And in them, she saw something she'd never expected to find in a vampire's gaze: honor. "If I do this," she said slowly, "and you're lying to me, I'll find a way to end you that your immortality can't survive." "I would expect nothing less," Lucian replied. Sarah took a breath, steadied her resolve, and pulled the blade free. The vampire gasped, a sound that was far too human, and staggered. She moved instinctively, catching his arm before he could fall, and the contact sent electricity racing up her spine. His skin was cold, unnaturally so, but solid, real. "I hate you," she whispered, though she wasn't sure if it was true anymore. "I know," Lucian replied, meeting her eyes, "but right now, hatred is the least of our problems." And so, in a cathedral built to honor the divine, a hunter and a vampire formed an alliance that would either save their worlds or doom them both. The evidence was waiting in a safe house Lucian maintained beneath the Trevi Fountain, accessed through a forgotten maintenance tunnel that smelled of damp stone and centuries-old secrets. Sarah kept her hand on the silver dagger at her belt as she followed the vampire through darkness that didn't seem to trouble him at all. "How are you walking?" she asked, eyeing the wound on his chest. He'd torn a strip from his shirt to bind it, but she could still smell the blood, strange and sweet, nothing like human blood. "Slowly," Lucian admitted, "and painfully. Silver doesn't kill us outright unless it reaches the heart and stays there, but it does hurt like nothing else in creation. You have excellent aim, by the way. Another inch to the left and we wouldn't be having this conversation." Despite everything, Sarah felt a flicker of pride. "I trained for years to make that shot." "It shows." He glanced back at her, and in the dim light filtering from his phone's flashlight, his smile was genuine. "The Venatori produce remarkable warriors. It's a shame they've been so thoroughly infiltrated." The safe house itself was surprisingly modest, a single room carved from the bedrock beneath Rome, furnished with a bed, a desk, and shelves lined with books and artifacts. A laptop sat open on the desk, its screen casting blue light across papers scattered like fallen leaves. "I've lived in many places," Lucian explained, gesturing around the space, "but I keep these refuges scattered across Europe. Somewhere to think, to plan, to remember what it means to be more than just a predator." Sarah's eyes caught on a photograph pinned to the wall, a woman with dark hair and kind eyes, standing in what looked like a medieval marketplace. "Who?" "My wife," Lucian said quietly, "Isabella. She died in 1632, victim of a plague that swept through Florence. I couldn't save her. For all my power, all my immortality, I couldn't stop a disease that killed thousands." He moved to the desk, careful not to look at the photograph. "That was the first time I understood that being a vampire doesn't make you a god, just a witness to endless tragedy." The grief in his voice was so raw, so real, that Sarah found herself stepping closer. "I'm sorry." "So am I." He opened a leather portfolio and spread documents across the desk. "But that's not why we're here. Look at these." The first document was a letter, written in Italian and dated 6 months prior. Sarah's Italian was decent, learned from a Venatori scholar, and she began to read. Her blood turned cold as she recognized the handwriting in the margins, Father Domenico's distinctive scrawl. This is... She couldn't finish the sentence. Correspondence between Victor and his new thrall, Lucian, confirmed. Your mentor. They've been planning this for years, Sarah. The Venatori Order is one of the few forces capable of mounting organized resistance against vampire kind. If Victor can destroy it and blame me, he achieves two goals: eliminates a threat and starts a war that will force vampires out of the shadows. The second document was worse, a detailed floor plan of the Prague stronghold, including the locations of the sleeping quarters, the armory, and the sacred chamber where young hunters took their vows. Someone had marked specific rooms with red X's. These are the children's dormitories, Sarah breathed, feeling sick. Victor doesn't believe in leaving loose ends. Lucian's voice was hard now, the gentleness replaced by something ancient and cold. He'll kill them all. Turn some of the older ones, perhaps, make an example, and the world will believe it was my doing because he has someone inside the Venatori who'll swear to it. Sarah's mind raced through the implications. She thought of Sophia, the 14-year-old girl who'd recently arrived at the stronghold, traumatized and nearly broken from a vampire attack that had killed her entire village. She thought of Brother Marcus, the elderly scholar who'd taught her Latin and theology, who still believed in the inherent goodness of humanity despite everything he'd witnessed. She thought of the dozens of young hunters, most of them orphans like herself, who'd found purpose and family in the order. How do we stop it? The question came out harder than she intended, but Lucian didn't flinch. We need to reach Prague before Victor does, warn the order, evacuate the children, and set a trap. He pulled out a map, marking positions with quick, efficient movements. Victor will arrive tomorrow night with at least 20 vampires, his inner circle. They're strong, fast, and utterly loyal to him. But they'll be expecting an easy target, not a fortified position with hunters ready for them. And Father Domenico, Sarah asked, her heart clenching, if he's truly turned. Then he's already dead, Lucian said bluntly. What walks around in his skin is something else, a puppet Victor controls through the blood bond. We'll need to kill him, Sarah. There's no bringing him back. The words hit her like physical blows. Father Domenico had found her, had trained her, had been the closest thing to a father she'd had since her family died. The thought of him as a monster, as something that needed to be destroyed? I can do it, she heard herself say, if it has to be done. Lucian studied her for a long moment. You're stronger than you know, but strength alone won't be enough. We need strategy, resources, and, he hesitated, we need you to trust me, completely, because what I'm about to suggest will sound insane. More insane than allying with the vampire I've sworn to kill? Much more insane. He moved to one of the shelves and pulled down an ornate wooden box. Inside, nestled in velvet, was a vial of dark liquid that seemed to pulse with its own light. This is blood from my bloodline, pure, undiluted, incredibly potent. If you drink it, you'll gain some of my abilities for approximately 24 hours. Enhanced strength, speed, regeneration. Enough to fight alongside me as an equal rather than a liability. Sarah stared at the vial in horror. You want me to? Absolutely not! I'm not becoming a monster. You won't become a vampire, Lucian clarified quickly. This isn't a turning. You'd need to die and be reborn for that. This is temporary, a sharing of power. Think of it as borrowing my strength. The effects will fade, and you'll return to normal. The Venatori teach that vampire blood is poison, Sarah said, but her voice lacked conviction. That even touching it corrupts the soul. The Venatori teach a lot of things that aren't quite accurate. Lucian held the vial up to the light, and the liquid inside seemed to swirl like smoke. I won't force you, But if you want to save your order, if you want to face Victor and win, you'll need every advantage we can muster. His followers are old, powerful vampires. Even with your skills, they'll cut through you like paper." The rational part of Sarah's brain screamed at her to refuse, to find another way. But she thought of Sophia's shy smile, of Brother Marcus's patient teachings, of the children who deserved a chance to grow up, to choose their own paths. "If I do this," she said slowly, "and you're using it to control me somehow?" "I'll give you a silver knife coated in my own blood," Lucian interrupted. "If you feel any sense of compulsion, any loss of will, you can end me with it. No resistance." He was serious. Sarah could see it in every line of his ancient face. "This is insane," she muttered. Then, before she could talk herself out of it, she reached for the vial. "If I die from this—" "You won't." His hand covered hers, guiding the vial to her lips. "Trust me, Sarah, just this once." The liquid burned like fire and ice all at once, sliding down her throat and spreading through her veins like liquid lightning. Sarah gasped, stumbled, and would have fallen if Lucian hadn't caught her. His arms were steel bands around her waist, holding her steady as her body convulsed with the transformation. "Breathe," he murmured against her ear, his voice impossibly close. "Don't fight it. Let it flow through you." She could feel everything, every molecule of air in the room, every vibration through the stone beneath her feet, every beat of her own thundering heart. Her senses exploded outward, and suddenly she could hear conversations happening on the streets above, could smell the city's thousand scents, could see details in the darkness that had been invisible moments before. "What?" She tried to speak, but her voice came out wrong, too sharp, too clear. "It's overwhelming at first," Lucian said, still holding her. "Your human brain trying to process information it wasn't designed to handle. Focus on something familiar. Your heartbeat, your breathing. Ground yourself." Sarah did as he instructed, focusing on the steady rhythm of her pulse. Slowly, the chaos resolved into something manageable. She could still sense everything, but it no longer threatened to drown her. "This is what you experience constantly?" she asked, wonder and horror mixing in her voice. "Every moment of every night for 6 centuries, Lucian confirmed. "Welcome to my world, Hunter." She pushed away from him, testing her new strength. She felt different, lighter, faster, more alive than she'd ever felt before. When she looked at her hands, they appeared the same, but she could sense the power flowing through them. "How long do we have?" she asked. Lucian checked his watch. "The sun will rise in 3 hours. We'll need to travel during daylight. I have methods, though they're not pleasant for me. If we leave now, we can reach Prague by tomorrow afternoon. That gives us a few hours to prepare before Victor arrives." "Then we should go." Sarah moved toward the door, then paused. "Lucian?" "Yes?" "Thank you for—" She gestured vaguely, unable to articulate everything she meant. "For this, for the truth, for giving me a chance to save them." His smile was sad and ancient. "Don't thank me yet. We still have to survive tomorrow night." They traveled in a specially modified van with blacked-out windows, the kind used by criminals and vampires to move during daylight hours. Lucian had explained that direct sunlight would kill him in minutes, but he could endure filtered light with enough protection. He wore heavy clothes, gloves, and a hood that made him look like a monk from some dark fairy tale. Sarah drove while he rested in the back, and she had time to process everything that had happened. The vampire blood still sang in her veins, making her hands too quick on the wheel, her reactions too sharp. She had to consciously slow herself down, remind herself that she was still mostly human. "Tell me about Victor," she called back to him as they crossed into Austria. "You said he broke from your coven. Why?" Lucian's voice drifted forward, tired but clear. Ideology, mostly. I believe vampires should maintain balance with the human world, feed carefully, erase memories, leave no evidence. We're parasites, essentially, and parasites survive by not killing their hosts. Victor believes we're the superior species, that we should rule openly, that hiding is cowardice. He paused. He's not entirely wrong. There's a certain shame, I suppose, in living in shadows for centuries. But the alternative is war, and war means extinction, for both our kinds. You really care about humans? Sarah couldn't keep the skepticism from her voice. I was human once, Lucian said simply. I remember it, even after all these centuries. I remember what it felt like to fear the dark, to love fiercely, to know my time was limited. That mortality gave life meaning. Without it, he trailed off. Let's just say immortality is both gift and curse. They stopped once at a roadside cafe, and Sarah was amazed at how acutely she could taste everything. The coffee was a symphony of flavors, the bread texture almost overwhelming. An elderly woman at the next table was wearing perfume, and Sarah could identify every individual note, could practically see the chemical composition. It fades, Lucian said when she mentioned it. He sat in a corner booth, hood still up, untouched espresso before him. The enhanced senses. When the blood wears off, you'll miss it. That's one of the dangers of this gift. It's addictive. Some humans have sought it out deliberately, become blood servants just to experience this clarity. I won't, Sarah said firmly, though part of her wondered if that was true. They reached Prague as the sun began its descent, painting the city in gold and crimson. The Venatori stronghold was located in the Old City, disguised as a monastery that dated back to the 13th century. Sarah had spent 5 years of her life within those walls, learning, training, becoming the warrior she was today. Now she was returning to save it. The guards at the gate recognized her immediately, Brother Pavel and Sister Catherine, both seasoned hunters. Their hands moved toward weapons when they saw Lucian beside her, but Sarah stepped forward quickly. "Stand down," she commanded. "He's with me. We need to see the council immediately. Where is Father Domenico?" Brother Pavel's weathered face showed confusion. "He's in meditation, as usual this time of day." "Sarah, what's going on? And why are you traveling with a vampire?" Lucian finished calmly. "Yes, I know it's unusual, but if you want everyone in this building to survive the night, you'll take us to your council now." The guards exchanged glances. Finally, Sister Catherine nodded. "Follow me, but if this is some kind of trick—" "It's not," Sarah said. "I swear on my vows." The council chamber was a circular room at the heart of the stronghold, its walls lined with weapons and holy symbols from a dozen different religions. 5 members sat around a stone table, the most senior hunters in the order, men and women who dedicated their lives to protecting humanity from supernatural threats. Mother Superior Alessandra, a fierce Italian woman in her 60s, stood as they entered. Her eyes widened at the sight of Lucian. "Sarah Blackwood," she said, her voice sharp as cut glass. "Explain why you've brought an abomination into our sacred space." "Because Father Domenico is the abomination," Sarah replied bluntly. "And if we don't act in the next few hours, everyone in this building will be dead." The room erupted in protests, but Lucian raised a hand, and something in his presence, ancient, powerful, undeniable, made them fall silent. "My name is Lucian Moreau," he said, "Alpha of the Eastern Coven. And yes, before you reach for your weapons, I could kill everyone in this room before you moved an inch, but I'm not here for that. I'm here because Victor Cross and his faction are planning to attack this stronghold tonight, and your beloved Father Domenico has been helping him plan it for 6 months." "Lies!" Brother Thomas, the youngest council member, spat. Father Domenico is the most devout among us." "Is dead," Lucian interrupted. "The thing wearing his skin is a thrall, bound to Victor through blood magic. And if you don't believe me, test him. Holy water, consecrated silver, any of the methods you know. Hell, fail them all." Mother Alessandra's face had gone pale. "If what you say is true, then we have 3 hours until Victor arrives with 20 of his followers," Sarah cut in. "They'll slaughter the children first, make an example. Then they'll kill everyone else and frame Lucian for it. It's designed to start a war between vampires and humans." The council members looked at each other, centuries of training and doctrine warring with the evidence before them. Finally, Brother Marcus, the elderly scholar who'd taught Sarah, spoke up. "I've noticed inconsistencies," he admitted quietly. "Father Domenico forgetting details he should know, avoiding the chapel during consecration ceremonies. I thought he was merely aging, but—" He looked at Lucian. "How do we verify this?" "Bring him here," Lucian said, "under guard and quickly. We don't have time for elaborate tests." 10 minutes later, Father Domenico entered the chamber, flanked by armed hunters. He looked exactly as Sarah remembered. Kind eyes, weathered face, the small scar above his left eyebrow from a training accident decades ago. When he saw her, he smiled. "Sarah, my child, it's good to see you safe, though I'm confused about why." His gaze landed on Lucian, and everything changed. His expression went flat, empty, and when he spoke again, his voice was different, hollow. "Victor sends his regards." Then he moved, faster than any human should be able to, straight for the youngest council member. His hand, now tipped with claws, reached for Brother Thomas's throat. Sarah was faster. The vampire blood in her veins gave her the speed she needed to intercept him, silver dagger flashing in the chamber's torchlight. She drove it into Father Domenico's chest, exactly where Lucian had taught her a vampire's heart would be. The creature that had worn her mentor's face hissed and crumbled to ash, leaving only the echo of Victor's laughter hanging in the air. The chamber was silent, except for Sarah's ragged breathing. She stood over the ashes, dagger still clutched in her hand, and felt tears stream down her face. "He was already gone," Lucian said softly, moving to stand beside her. "That thing wasn't him, not for months." "I know," Sarah whispered. "Doesn't make it easier." Mother Alessandra stood slowly, her face hard as stone. "Forgive us, Master Moreau. It appears we owe you complicated debts. What do you need?" "Evacuate the children," Lucian said immediately. "Everyone under 16 and any non-combatants. Get them out of the city entirely. Then fortify this building with every weapon you have. Silver, holy water, blessed ammunition, everything. We're going to turn this stronghold into a trap." "And Victor?" Mother Alessandra asked. Lucian's smile was all predator. "Victor is mine." The next 2 hours were controlled chaos. Children were hustled into vans and sent to safe houses in the countryside, their confused protests muted by the grim determination of their caretakers. Sarah watched Sophia being led away, the girl's wide eyes finding hers across the courtyard. "Be brave," Sarah called to her. "We'll see you soon." She hoped it wasn't a lie. The hunters transformed the stronghold into a fortress. Holy water was poured in lines across doorways and windows. Silver ammunition was distributed, along with blessed blades and stakes. The most skilled archers took positions on the rooftops, while the close combat specialists prepared for fighting in the corridors. Lucien moved through it all like a general preparing for war, his 6 centuries of experience evident in every decision. He showed them the weak points in their defenses, the places vampires would naturally attack, the ways to create kill zones and fallback positions. "He's good at this," Brother Marcus observed, watching from beside Sarah. "Terrifyingly good," she agreed. As the sun finally set, Lucien gathered them in the main hall. 23 hunters, armed and ready, facing a vampire who should be their enemy. "Victor will come with confidence," Lucien told them. "He believes you're unaware, unprepared. That arrogance is our advantage. Let them breach the outer walls. We've prepared those corridors as kill zones. Force them to split up, to fight in confined spaces where their numbers matter less. And remember, these are old vampires. They've survived centuries by being smart and ruthless. Don't give them a chance to coordinate." "And what will you be doing?" Mother Alessandra asked. "Hunting," Lucien said simply. "Victor and I have unfinished business. I'll draw him deep into the stronghold, away from his followers. Sarah will come with me." "I will?" Sarah asked, surprised. "You're the only one here with the speed to keep up," Lucien pointed out. "And Victor knows about you now. He'll want to see you die personally. We'll use that." Mother Alessandra nodded slowly. "Then God go with you both. And may whatever divine force watches over vampires show mercy as well." Lucien's laugh was bitter. "I stopped believing in divine mercy 3 centuries ago, Mother Superior, but I appreciate the sentiment." They felt Victor's arrival before they saw it. A cold pressure in the air, like a storm front rolling in. The vampires came over the walls like shadows given form, 20 figures moving with inhuman grace and speed. They spread out immediately, professional and coordinated, heading for the main building. Then the first trap sprung. Holy water, mixed with silver dust and blessed by 3 different religious traditions, sprayed from hidden containers. The vampires' screams were inhuman, echoing off the monastery's ancient stones. Silver-tipped arrows fell like rain, fired by hunters who'd trained for years for exactly this moment. Victor's followers were fast, strong, and experienced, but they'd walked into a prepared kill zone, and the Venatori are nothing if not efficient. 3 vampires fell in the first minute, bodies crumbling to ash. 5 more in the second, caught by a coordinated crossfire. But the survivors reached the building, and then the real fighting began. Sarah watched from her position near the chapel, Lucien at her side. She could feel his tension, could sense his focus narrowing to a single point. The vampire blood in her veins let her see what he saw, the patterns in the chaos, the way Victor's forces moved with military precision despite their losses. "There," Lucien breathed, pointing to a figure that appeared in the monastery's main entrance. "That's him." Victor Cross was beautiful, the way a sword is beautiful, all sharp edges and lethal grace. He wore modern clothes, but carried himself like nobility from another age. When he smiled, Sarah saw fangs that looked longer than normal, more pronounced. "Lucien!" Victor's voice carried across the courtyard, amplified by supernatural power. "I should have known you'd ruin my fun. You always were too sentimental about humans." "Victor!" Lucien called back. "Still making the same mistakes after 60 years. Still thinking chaos is the same as strength." "Chaos is cleansing," Victor replied. He stepped fully into view, and Sarah noticed he cast no shadow in the torchlight. "Our kind deserves to rule, not hide. But you're too much of a coward to admit it. And you're too much of a fool to understand balance." Lucian shot back. Then, to Sarah, in a voice too quiet for Victor to hear, "Remember the plan. When I engage him, circle around. He'll be focused on me. Wait for the opening." Sarah nodded, adrenaline and vampire blood mixing in her veins to create a heady cocktail of power and focus. Lucian stepped forward, moving into the courtyard. "You want war, Victor? Then face me first. Prove you're more than just rhetoric and empty promises." Victor's laugh was cold. "Gladly." They collided in the center of the courtyard, and Sarah had never seen anything like it. They moved faster than her enhanced eyes could fully track, exchanging blows that would have killed any normal creature. Lucian was older, more experienced, but Victor fought with a recklessness that came from having nothing to lose. Around them, the battle raged. Hunters fought desperately against the remaining vampires, the monastery filling with shouts and screams and the smell of blood and ash. But Sarah kept her focus on the two figures in the courtyard, waiting for her moment. It came when Victor overextended, lunging for Lucian's throat with claws extended. Lucian dodged, created an opening, and Sarah moved. She flowed across the courtyard like water, blade already in motion, striking for Victor's back. But Victor was old and cunning. He spun at the last instant, caught her wrist, and smiled. "The little hunter," he purred. "I've heard so much about you. The orphan who became a weapon. Did Lucian tell you? I chose your family specifically. Your mother's research was becoming inconvenient." Rage exploded through Sarah, hot and bright. She twisted in his grip, using the vampire strength flowing through her to break free, and slashed upward with her blade. Victor laughed and released her, dancing backward with infuriating ease. "Good," he said. "Show me what you've learned." Lucian attacked from the side, forcing Victor to divide his attention. The three of them moved through the courtyard like dancers in some lethal ballet, blades flashing, blood spilling. Sarah felt every movement with crystalline clarity, the vampire blood heightening her senses, showing her openings, giving her speed she'd never dreamed possible. But it wasn't enough. Victor was too old, too strong, too skilled. For every hit they landed, he landed 3. Sarah felt his claws rake across her ribs, felt her enhanced healing already working to close the wound, but the pain was staggering. "You can't win," Victor taunted, blocking another of Lucian's strikes. "You're bound by your precious laws, your need for balance. I'm free, Lucian, free to do what needs to be done." "Freedom without purpose is just madness," Lucian shot back, pressing harder. Around them, the battle was turning. The Venatori had trained for this, prepared for this, but Victor's followers were centuries old, and slowly, inexorably, they were gaining ground. Sarah heard Brother Marcus cry out, saw Sister Catherine fall, and felt desperation claw at her chest. They were losing. Then she remembered something Lucian had told her during the drive to Prague. Vampires are bound by rules older than civilization. An alpha cannot directly kill those who once swore loyalty, but there are loopholes, ways to break oaths through single combat, through witnessed challenges. "Victor," she called out, her voice cutting through the chaos, "I challenge you!" Everything stopped. Even the fighting around them paused as vampires and hunters alike turned to stare at her. Victor's eyes widened in genuine surprise. "You?" he laughed. "You're not even one of us, girl. You can't." "She can," Lucian interrupted, understanding immediately what Sarah was doing. "She carries my blood. By ancient law, that makes her my proxy. A challenge issued by her is a challenge issued by me. Victor's expression shifted, calculation replacing amusement. You're clever, Lucien, I'll give you that. But if she fights as your proxy, then by the same law, her death counts as yours. Are you willing to risk that? Yes, Lucien said, without hesitation, his eyes meeting Sarah's. In them, she saw trust. Complete, absolute trust. I believe in her. The words warmed something in her chest that had been frozen since her family died. So be it, Victor said, and his smile turned vicious. Single combat, to the death, witnessed by both our kinds. And when I tear her apart, Lucien, your line ends with her screams. The courtyard cleared, fighters pulling back to form a circle. Hunters and vampires stood side by side, united by the ancient law of the challenge. Sarah found herself in the center, facing Victor, with the weight of two worlds on her shoulders. "Last chance to back down, little hunter," Victor said, circling her slowly. "I've killed thousands. What makes you think you're special?" "Because I have something you don't," Sarah replied, raising her blade. "Something worth fighting for." Victor attacked, and this time there was no holding back. He moved with the speed of centuries, with strength that could shatter stone, with the absolute confidence of a predator who'd never met his equal. His claws sought her throat, her heart, her eyes, killing blows delivered with surgical precision. But Sarah was no longer just a hunter. The vampire blood in her veins sang with power. And more than that, she fought with the clarity of purpose Victor had abandoned centuries ago. Every move she made was for the children they'd evacuated, for Brother Marcus and his patient teachings, for her murdered family, for a world where humans and vampires might find balance instead of endless war, and for Lucien, who'd trusted her with everything. She fought like she'd never fought before, channeling 8 years of training and the enhanced abilities flowing through her blood. Her blade found flesh, drew blood that smoked and hissed. Victor's strikes landed too, tearing through her clothes, her skin, but her borrowed healing kept her moving, kept her fighting. The courtyard was silent, except for the sound of combat. Blade meeting claw, bodies colliding, gasps of pain and effort. Sarah lost track of time, lost track of everything except the ancient vampire before her and the desperate need to survive. Then she saw it, a pattern in Victor's attacks. He favored his right side, always had, a habit from some long-ago injury that even immortality couldn't quite erase. It was subtle, almost invisible, but it was there. Sarah feinted left, and when Victor instinctively moved to protect his right, she changed direction mid-strike, something only possible with the vampire speed she'd borrowed. Her blade plunged into his chest, found his heart, and drove deep. Victor's eyes widened in shock. He grabbed her wrist, tried to pull the blade free, but Sarah held on with all the strength she had. She leaned close, close enough to whisper in his ear. "That was for my mother," she said, "and for every family you destroyed. May you find no peace in whatever comes after." Victor crumbled to ash, his final expression frozen between rage and disbelief. The ancient vampire who'd threatened to tear apart both their worlds was gone, reduced to nothing but dust that scattered on the evening wind. Sarah stood alone in the circle, covered in blood and ash, trembling with exhaustion and the aftershock of borrowed power. Around her, the courtyard erupted in chaos. Victor's remaining followers either fleeing into the night or dropping to their knees in surrender, the bonds of loyalty broken by their leader's death. Then Lucian was there, catching her as her legs finally gave out. His arms wrapped around her, solid and real, and she felt his chest shaking with something that might have been laughter or tears. "You did it," he whispered against her hair. "You magnificent, impossible, brilliant woman. You did it." "We did it," Sarah corrected, too tired to hold herself upright. The vampire blood was fading now, she could feel it, and with it went all the strength that had kept her moving. "I couldn't have, without you." "Rest," Lucian said gently, lifting her as easily as if she weighed nothing. "You've earned it." The last thing Sarah saw before exhaustion claimed her was the faces of the Venatori hunters, staring at her with expressions that mixed awe and gratitude, and something that might have been the beginning of understanding. She woke in her old room at the stronghold, sunlight streaming through the window. Her body ached in 1,000 places, and when she tried to sit up, every muscle protested. But she was alive. The Venatori were alive. Brother Marcus sat in a chair beside her bed, reading by the morning light. When he saw her stir, his weathered face creased into a smile. "Welcome back, child. You've been asleep for nearly 16 hours. "Lucian?" The name came out hoarse, and Marcus passed her a glass of water. "Safe, though resting in the deepest cellar where sunlight can't reach. Mother Alessandra posted guards to make sure no one disturbed him." Marcus set his book aside. "You've given the council much to think about, Sarah. Everything we thought we knew about vampires, about the nature of good and evil, you've complicated it all considerably." "I'm sorry," Sarah started, but Marcus raised a hand. "Don't be. Sometimes truth is more important than comfort. Master Moreau has proposed an alliance. His coven will help us hunt the truly monstrous vampires, the ones like Victor who threaten both our kinds. In exchange, we'll leave his people in peace, provided they follow his rules about feeding and discretion." "And the council agreed?" Sarah couldn't hide her surprise. "Not unanimously," Marcus admitted. "But after last night, after watching a vampire fight beside us to protect our children, it's hard to maintain the old certainties. We're going to try something new, something your mother would have approved of, I think." Tears stung Sarah's eyes. "You knew her?" "I knew of her work," Marcus said gently. "I was one of the few who read her early papers before the order suppressed them. She believed in coexistence, in understanding. You've honored her memory more than you know." A knock on the door interrupted them. Mother Alessandra entered, her expression unreadable. "Sarah Blackwood," she said formally. "The council has reached a decision regarding your actions. Your alliance with Master Moreau, while unorthodox and technically against our laws, saved this stronghold and potentially prevented a war that would have consumed countless lives. Therefore, we've decided not to punish you. Instead—" She paused, and something that might have been approval flickered across her stern features. "We're creating a new position, liaison between the Venatori Order and the Eastern Coven. Someone who understands both worlds, who can walk between them. We'd like you to accept this role." Sarah stared at her, unable to process the words. "You want me to work with vampires? Officially?" "We want you to build the bridge your mother envisioned," Mother Alessandra corrected. "It won't be easy. Many in the Order still see vampires as nothing but monsters. And many vampires will see you as a hunter who can't be trusted. But if anyone can make this work, it's you." "I don't know if I can," Sarah admitted. "That's why you're perfect for it," Marcus said with a smile. "Anyone certain they could do this would be a fool. Doubt means you'll be careful, thoughtful, wise." Mother Alessandra nodded. "Master Moreau will be informed of your decision when he wakes. Until then, rest, heal. You've earned it." They left her alone with her thoughts, and Sarah lay back against the pillows, staring at the ceiling. A liaison, a bridge between worlds. It was everything her mother had wanted, everything she'd worked toward before Victor's cruelty had ended her life. And it meant spending more time with Lucien. That thought sent complicated emotions swirling through her chest. The vampire who should be her enemy, who'd lost his wife centuries ago, who'd trusted her with his blood, his life, his secrets, who'd looked at her with those ancient violet eyes and seen not just a weapon, but a person worth believing in. Sleep claimed her again, and this time she dreamed of a world where humans and vampires found balance, where her mother's research became reality, where the war that had taken everything from her might finally end. Night fell again, and Sarah made her way to the cellar where Lucien waited. The guards nodded respectfully as she passed. Word of her victory over Victor had spread, turning her into something of a legend within the order. She found him in the deepest chamber, sitting on a simple cot, reading a book by candlelight. He looked up when she entered, and his smile was both relieved and cautious. "You're healed," he observed. "That's good. I was worried about the damage you took." "Worried about your investment?" Sarah asked, trying for levity and not quite achieving it. "Worried about you," Lucien corrected gently. He set the book aside. "I've been alive for 6 centuries, Sarah. I've seen thousands of warriors, hundreds of remarkable people, but I've never met anyone quite like you. You're—" he struggled for words. "You're extraordinary." "I'm an orphan who got lucky," Sarah replied, but the words lacked conviction. She moved closer, sat on the edge of his cot. "The council offered me a position, liaison between your people and mine." "I know. Mother Alessandra sent word." Lucien studied her face. "Will you accept?" "I don't know. It means working with you. A lot. And I'm not—" She hesitated, unsure how to articulate the confusion swirling through her. "I don't know what we are, Lucien. 3 days ago, you were the monster I'd sworn to kill. Now you're something else, someone else." "I'm still a monster," Lucien said quietly. "Don't mistake necessity for redemption. I've done terrible things, Sarah. I'll likely do more before I finally meet true death. But I'm trying to be more than just a predator, trying to find meaning in these endless years." "Why?" The question came out more desperate than she intended. "Why do you care? You could leave, start over somewhere else, forget about all of this." "Because I'm tired," Lucien admitted. "Tired of violence, of hiding, of watching everything I build turn to dust. When I looked at you in that cathedral, when you drove that blade into my chest without hesitation, I saw someone who still believed in something, who fought for more than just survival. It reminded me what I'd lost, what I wanted to find again." Sarah's breath caught. "And did you find it?" "I think so." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. His fingers were cold, but the gesture was infinitely gentle. "I found you." The words hung between them, heavy with possibility and danger and something that might have been hope. Sarah knew she should leave, should maintain professional distance, should remember everything the Venatori had taught her about vampires and their manipulations. But she also remembered how he'd caught her when she fell, how he'd trusted her with his blood, his secrets, his very life, how he'd looked at her not as a weapon or a tool, but as someone worthy of respect and partnership. "I hate that I'm even considering this," she whispered. "My family would want you to be happy," Lucien interrupted gently, "to find purpose, connection, maybe even love. not to spend your life as just an instrument of vengeance. Is that what this is? Sarah asked. I don't know, Lucien admitted. I haven't felt it in 3 centuries. But whatever it is, it's real and terrifying and entirely your choice. Sarah closed her eyes, thinking of her mother's research, of bridge building and understanding, of the possibility that enemies might become something more, that hatred might transform into something better. When she opened her eyes, Lucien was waiting patiently. No pressure in his gaze, just acceptance of whatever she decided. I'll take the position, she said finally, and we'll see what happens. No promises, no expectations, just possibility. Lucien's smile could have lit the entire cellar. I can work with possibility. Good. Sarah stood, suddenly feeling awkward. I should go. Let you rest. We have a lot of work ahead of us. Victor's faction is scattered, but they'll need to be dealt with. And the Council wants to establish protocols for vampire hunter cooperation. And? Sarah, Lucien interrupted, catching her hand. Breathe. We have time. For the first time in either of our lives, we actually have time. She squeezed his cold fingers, felt the strange rightness of it, and smiled despite herself. Time. What a novel concept. The months that followed were unlike anything Sarah had imagined. She and Lucien traveled across Europe, meeting with vampire covens and hunter chapters, negotiating treaties and establishing boundaries. It was delicate work, fraught with centuries of mistrust and hatred, but slowly, impossibly, they made progress. They hunted together too, tracking down the remnants of Victor's faction and the other vampires who refused to follow Lucien's rules about restraint and discretion. Sarah learned to fight alongside a vampire instead of against one, learned to trust in ways she'd never thought possible. And somewhere in the midst of all that work, all that danger and diplomacy, she fell in love. It wasn't sudden or dramatic. There was no single moment of realization. Instead, it crept up on her in small increments. The way Lucien always made sure she ate when she got too focused on work, how he listened to her stories about her family without pity, just genuine interest. The way his ancient eyes would warm when she walked into a room, how his rare smiles became less rare when directed at her. The way he made her feel seen, not as a weapon or a hunter or an orphan, but simply as Sarah. 6 months after Victor's death, they were in Vienna, meeting with a particularly stubborn coven leader who refused to accept the new alliance. The negotiations had dragged on for hours, and Sarah was exhausted, frustrated, ready to walk away. Then Lucien's hand found hers under the table, cold fingers intertwining with hers, and squeezed gently. A reminder that she wasn't alone, that they were partners in this impossible task. The simple gesture broke something open in her chest. That night, back in their hotel, separate rooms, always separate rooms, Lucien scrupulously proper despite the tension crackling between them, Sarah knocked on his door. He answered in shirt sleeves, hair slightly disheveled, looking more human than she'd ever seen him. "Sarah, is everything all right?" "No," she said honestly. "Everything is terrifying and complicated, and I'm probably making the worst decision of my life. But I can't keep pretending I don't feel it anymore." "Feel what?" But there was hope in his voice, in those violet eyes. "This." She stepped forward and kissed him. For a heartbeat, Lucien went perfectly still. Then his arms wrapped around her, pulling her close, and he kissed her back with 6 centuries of loneliness and longing poured into the contact. His lips were cold, but his passion was fire, and Sarah felt herself melting into him, into this impossible, beautiful thing growing between them. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, or, in Lucien's case, breathing purely by habit, he pressed his forehead against her. "Are you sure?" he whispered. "Once we cross this line." "I've never been sure of anything," Sarah interrupted, "but I'm tired of letting fear make my decisions. I want this. I want you. However it works, whatever it means." "It means everything," Lucian said simply. "It means you've taken a broken, ancient thing and reminded him what it feels like to be alive. It means I'll spend however long you'll have me trying to be worthy of you." "You already are," Sarah said, and kissed him again. A year after that night in the cathedral, Sarah stood on the balcony of a safe house in Prague, watching the sun set over the city. Inside, Lucian waited for darkness, waited for the moment he could join her outside safely. The alliance was holding, though it remained fragile. Some hunters still saw vampires as nothing but monsters. Some vampires still saw humans as nothing but prey, but slowly, impossibly, minds were changing. The bridge her mother had envisioned was being built, one careful negotiation at a time. Sophia, the girl she'd helped evacuate, had just passed her first trial. She'd chosen to become a hunter, but a different kind, one who understood that not all vampires were enemies, that the world was more complex than simple categories of good and evil. Brother Marcus had completed her mother's research, publishing it with the council's blessing. It was controversial, sparking heated debates across the supernatural world, but it was out there, making people think, question, evolve. And Sarah had found something she'd thought died with her family: purpose, connection, love. The sun finally dropped below the horizon, and moments later, she felt Lucian's presence behind her. His arms wrapped around her waist, his chin resting on her shoulder, and they stood together watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. "Penny, for your thoughts?" he murmured. "Just thinking about how strange life is," Sarah replied, leaning back against his chest. "A year ago, I was trying to kill you. Now I can't imagine existing without you." "Life is very strange," Lucian agreed, "and stranger still when you live for centuries. But this is the best strangeness I've experienced in 600 years. "Only the best?" Sarah teased. "The best thing I've ever experienced in 600 years, Lucian corrected, turning her to face him. "You gave me something I thought I'd lost forever, Sarah. Hope, purpose, a reason to care about tomorrow instead of just enduring it." "We gave each other that," Sarah said. "I was just a weapon before you, just anger and grief shaped into something useful. You helped me remember I'm human, that I'm allowed to love, to hope, to build, instead of just destroy. We're quite the pair, aren't we?" Lucian's smile was warm now, easier than it had been a year ago. The vampire and the hunter who fell in love. It sounds like a fairy tale when you say it like that. "Maybe it is," Lucian said. "The best kind, one with complications and scars and hard-won victories. One where the monster and the hero realize they're both just trying to find meaning in an impossible world." Sarah kissed him, soft and sweet, and felt the rightness of it settle into her bones. This wasn't the life she'd planned, wasn't the revenge she'd sworn to claim. It was better, harder, more complex, more real. "I love you," she said, the words still new enough to feel dangerous. "My vampire, my partner, my impossible future." "And I love you," Lucian replied, "my warrior, my light in the darkness, my reason for enduring another 600 years if fate allows it." They stood together on that balcony, hunter and vampire, enemies turned lovers, watching the night unfold over Prague. Below them, the city hummed with life, human and vampire both, existing in the fragile peace they'd helped create. It wasn't perfect. There would be setbacks, betrayals, moments of doubt. The bridge between their worlds would always require constant maintenance, constant effort, constant faith in possibility over certainty. But standing there in Lucian's arms, Sarah thought of her mother's research, her little brother's lullaby, the promise that stars would always guide travelers home. And she realized she'd finally found hers. Not in revenge or duty or the simple certainty of hatred, but in love, in partnership, in the impossible, beautiful reality of a vampire and a hunter who'd chosen each other over everything their worlds demanded they should be. The stars emerged fully now, brilliant against the darkening sky. And somewhere in the city, a bell tolled the hour. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new negotiations, new threats to the fragile peace. But tonight, they had this: each other. And the knowledge that sometimes the greatest courage isn't in fighting your enemies. It's in learning to love them.